Today we will be learning how to paint this gorgeous looking lavender field with watercolors. We will start by learning how to paint the sky using the gradient technique. Then we will learn how to create the softest looking mountains in the background. Then we will move on to paint the lavender field and we will learn how to create this beautiful texture with just simple splattering technique. And lastly, we will end the painting by adding lots of dancing birds in the sky. Don't worry if you're a complete beginner. I'll walk you through each and every step in detail throughout this video. So just go grab your materials and let's get started. Hello everyone. I'm Shreya, a full-time artist, art educator, Skillshare teacher. My teacher name is Shreya Gada. YouTuber. My YouTube handle is Paint with Shreya. And I'm from India. And this year I am part of Pigeon Letter Design team. You can check out all of my work and announcement on Instagram under the handle @artistshreya. Alright, so that's it for now and let's get started. Before we start, let's talk about the materials that you will need for the today's painting. First of all, let's talk about the paper. It's so important to use the right kind of paper. So here I'll be using 300 GSM, 100% cotton, cold pressed watercolor paper. Next, you will need watercolors. You don't need the exact shades. I will walk you through each and every color in the later stage when we will be painting with them. Right? Next, you will need brushes. Here I'll be using Pigeon Letters cruelty free wooden handle brushes. I'll be using size 6, size 14, size 2 and one liner brush to create the birds. They have a beautiful round tip, plus they are so stiff, and lastly they hold a lot of water, which is so important for me when you are working with watercolors. Plus they look so beautiful. Alright, so yeah, next you'll need a pencil to sketch out your painting, 2 jars of water, a tissue or a rough cloth, an eraser, masking tape, and lastly a scale to draw out the lines, and of course a white watercolor or a white gouache, whichever is available with you. So that's it for all the materials. Go grab them and let's get started. As always, we will start by applying masking tape on all four sides of the paper. Make sure that you are thoroughly pressing down the masking tape on the paper and see that there's no gap between the paper and the tape, otherwise you won't get the clear looking edge at the end. Alright, once you have applied the masking tape, let's start with the sketching part. So first, as always, we will start by drawing the horizon line. This time I will draw a line in a way that 2/3 of my paper is for the land and 1/3 is for the sky. Once we have sketched out our horizon line, we will start painting the tiny little houses on top of our horizon line. Painting houses is very simple. Just follow what I'm doing. So here I have just speed up the process so that you don't get bored, but you can always pause the video at the end when the sketch is completely done and you can sketch at your own speed. Just below the house area, we will draw a little bit of land and then we will start with the lavender field. So here I'm just drawing that, and I'll also draw some bushes and some trees behind the house. And I will very lightly sketch the blurry mountains which we will be painting. Remember to sketch them very light because we will be using very light wash of blue to paint that, and you don't want the pencil marks to show up on the paper when the painting is completely done. So make sure you draw everything light. Here I'm drawing a little bit darker so that you all can see, but make sure you are drawing it as light as possible. Alright, so here I'm drawing one more line just below the horizon line. That would be a little bit of lined area, and then the last thing we have to sketch is the lavender field. So here first I'll draw a dot at the center of the paper, and then we will draw all the lines in a way that they end at the tiny little dot that we created. So this is one point perspective which we are using to paint, I mean to sketch the lavender field. Now let's start with the fun part, that is the painting. So I will tilt my board a little by just placing it above my tray. You can use a masking tape to place it below your paper so that it is a little bit tilted, and then we will start painting the sky part. So I will wet the whole of the sky area including the mountains with a clean water. Make sure that you are applying even layer of water on that part. So take your time doing that. Move your brush in all directions, that is up and down, top and bottom, to make sure that you have covered the whole area with even layer of water. Once that is done, I took my cerulean blue and I started painting from the top, and as I moved downwards I cleaned my brush and pulled the color down and just blended it with the water. So basically what we want is we want darker color on the top, and as you move downwards you want it to be a little bit lighter. Plus tilting the board will help you move the colors downward, so make sure you do that. Now once I'm happy with my sky, I started painting the mountain while my paper is still wet. So here I'm taking a very light value of ultramarine blue and I painted one layer of mountain. Now I will take the same ultramarine blue, but this time I will take a little bit of darker value, that is I will add little less water to it, and I will paint one more layer of mountain. Remember, you have to do this while your paper is still wet, otherwise you will not get the softer looking mountains in the background. Alright, so once we have painted the mountains, I will start painting the bushes and the trees around the houses. So here I'm taking sap green and I will start painting the bushes with my smaller brush size 2. Remember, you have to again do this while your paper is still wet or while your sky area is still wet to get those soft looking edges for the bushes. I'll be using my sap green, and in between I will also add a little bit of ultramarine blue to my sap green to make it a little bit darker, and I will add few dots of those onto my bush area. In case your paper got dried out in between, let it completely dry, re-wet your paper and then do this step, especially the mountains. I'm pretty happy with how my bushes are looking. They have got so much layers and so much depth to it. So now I will let it completely dry, and then we will start painting a little bit of land area which we have left just below the house. So here painting this part is very simple. What I'll do is I will take raw umber and I will apply a very light wash of that color onto the whole area. And then I will take a little bit of burnt sienna and I will add that color just below the house to create a little bit of shadow of those house onto the land area. In case you don't have these colors, you can use yellow ochre. I'm sure you will have that in your basic watercolor set. And you can use burnt sienna. In case you don't have burnt sienna, you can add a little bit of darker value to your yellow ochre to make it little darker, or you can even add a little bit of red to create the shadow. Then we will start painting the roof of our houses. So I wanted it to look a little bit of brighter roof. So what I did is I added tiny bit of orange to my burnt sienna and I painted those roofs with very light value of that color. And now I will let it dry completely. So while that is drying, let's prepare our purples for our lavender field. So you can directly use dioxide purple if you have, but I really like mixing my own purples. So what I'll do is I will take my ultramarine blue and I will mix bright rose to my purple to get a beautiful fresh looking purple. So you can use your ultramarine blue and you can use any pink, that is permanent rose, bright rose, permanent pink, any red which is more towards the pink, and you will get a beautiful purple shade when you will mix those two colors together. So yeah, I will also swatch dioxide purple just below that, so you'll see that it is almost similar, but our color is much more brighter and fresh. So I'll be using all these three colors to paint our lavender field, that is the mix of the color and as well as the bright rose and ultramarine blue. Alright, so let's get started. So before we start, we will wet the whole of the bottom part with even layer of water, as we'll be using completely wet on wet technique to paint our lavender field. Once I have applied even layer of water, I will start painting the lavender field with the color which we have mixed earlier. The only reason I love using the mix of ultramarine and rose is because you see ultramarine has a little bit of granulating effect and that color would separate a bit on our paper as well, giving us the beautiful texture and effect by the end. So if you have ultramarine blue and pink, then do mix your purple before painting and don't use the pre-mixed purples. Alright, so yeah, I started painting the very light wash of the purple which we had mixed, and then I'm switching to my smaller brush and I'm taking thicker paint and painting the same color in a way our lines are going. So remember, the colors would be darker at the bottom, and as you move towards the horizon line, the lines would get thinner as well as the color would get lighter. Don't worry, I promise it would look beautiful by the end. I know this is the 30 stage of our painting, but don't give up yet. Alright, so yeah, now let's add splatters and texture. But before you do that, remember to cover the top portion with a tissue or a cloth. And now it's time to add lots of splatters. So first I will start by adding splatters of ultramarine blue. So splattering is very simple. First, take a small brush, otherwise you will end up getting huge splatters if you are using a large brush. Load your brush with paint and then either use your hand or just another brush to tap onto the brush which is filled with paint, and you will see drops of water or drops of paint would fall on the paper, and as the paper is still wet it will create blooms. The different colors would mixed into each other and it will create its own beautiful mix and texture. right? So I did it with ultramarine blue. I also did it with the purple, but this time I added more of pink and less of blue, so you will see the purple is a little bit more brighter. Now I'm again adding splatters with the pink color directly, and in between I also splattered just clean water, and I'm repeating this step. So you can stop this whenever you feel like you have added a lot of splatters onto the paper. I know it is very hard to stop, but you need to stop. Don't overdo it, otherwise it won't look great by the end. All right, so I'll add one more time splatters, and then we will move on to painting the roof of the house. So you remember we just painted very light value, so here I'm just adding a little bit of darker value and few lines on top of it. And I will also paint the bottom part of our house with very light value of yellow ochre or raw sienna, and then we will let everything dry. Once everything is dry, we will start painting the trees behind those houses. Make sure that you are painting some trees smaller, larger, thinner, and fatter to make it look much more natural. So we are almost done with our painting. Now all we have to do is add details. So let's first start by adding doors and windows to our houses. I really wanted to add something which pops out. So here I'm using very thick consistency of cerulean blue and painting our doors with that color. And then we will move on to doing the splatters, but this time we will be doing wet on dry. That is, the paper is completely dry and we will use the wet paint on top of it. The method remains the same, that is, cover the top portion with tissue and then start adding the splatters with your colors, that is the mix of ultramarine blue and bright rose, the ultramarine blue, the bright rose, as well as I also splattered a little bit of white. So here I am using white gouache, but if you don't have white gouache you can use thick consistency of white color or even white acrylic. All right, so yeah, I just lifted off my paper which was on the top to see how it was looking, and I felt like I need a little bit of more splatter, so here I am doing it one more time. Here I'm just showing you my hands, like how dirty it got after all the splatters that we did. So yeah, be prepared to get dirty. All those splatters are not just on my hands but all around my table as well as the top which I'm wearing. So make sure you are wearing either old clothes or not white. Okay. So yeah, I will add a little bit of darker value onto the trees. And lastly, I'm also adding few bushes on the area where the land is meeting the lavender field. So the technique remains the same. Again, I'm using small brush size 2, and I'm using my sap green color for my first layer. And once I'm happy with the first layer of my bush, I will add a little bit of darker green color on top of it. So to make your green darker, you already know you can either add your ultramarine blue or you can add indigo, Persian blue, any darker blue which you have. I will also add a little bit of yellow onto the bush area. So now let's end this painting by adding few dancing birds in the sky. Here I'm using my favorite brush to paint birds in my sky. This is the liner brush from Pigeon Letters, and it just makes painting brush so easy. So yeah, I'm using Pine Gray. You can use black or even Prussian blue or indigo to paint the birds. So painting birds is simple, a line and a dot at the center. That's all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed painting along with me and you learned a little bit about watercolors. Now it's your turn to paint, so remove all your supplies and get started. It looks difficult, but it's not, and you will only know when you will start painting. Alright, so yeah, I'm really excited and eagerly waiting for your painting. So yeah, if you do paint, then do tag us so that we will know. And we are done with our painting, so we will wait for it to be completely dry, and then we will peel off the masking tape at an angle which is away from the paper, and do it slowly so that you don't end up tearing it. And we got the cleanest looking edges, which I'm so happy about, and this is the look of our final painting. It's so beautiful. So that's it for now. I'll see you guys really soon. Bye.